Oh, all right. Welcome to chess, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, so as you guys know, I'm following Wesley So through Tata Steel. It happened like 10 months ago, so I mean, I'm not actually following him, but I'm just playing through his games and analyzing his games from Tata Steel or Wijk Aan Zee from earlier in the year. So those of you that haven't watched any of my videos, let me just pull it up real quick for you. This is the standings of the Tata Steel for 2020. You see Wesley So there, 7.5 out of 13. So the +2 is he has 2 wins, -0 is no losses, and =11 is 11 draws. So you have 5.5 for the 11 draws, and you have 2 for the wins. So that gives him his 7.5 out of 13. And so I actually have a really good one for you guys here. It was pretty exciting to look at. There's a lot of ups and downs. It's really tricky. There's a lot of points in the game where you only really have one move to make. If you make any other seemingly good moves, it could mess up your whole position. So let me get this out the way here. Like I said, I'm pretty excited about this one. So if you guys are ready, I'm ready. Let's take a look. All right, let me get this rolling here. All right, bam. So I have C4, known as the English opening, just by itself. We have C6, D4. Get this up here. All right, so we have knight to F6, knight to C3, D5. All right, so we have C takes D5, pawn takes D5, and now so we have the Slav defense, the exchange variation. It's kind of the modern way of playing it. It's definitely something you'll see at the high levels. The thing about it is when you play D4, somebody follows up with D5, you play C4. You have many different options. You go into like a Slav, you can go into like a Queen's Gambit decline, Queen's Gambit accepted. But the Slav in the database is the most heavily played defense against a C4 or Queen's Gambit type of a situation. So, we're just developing pieces here. All right, so we have bishop to F4. A really good square. You always want to try to get your bishops if you can to like a C4, F4. That's just where they're maximizing their scope. You have the bishop that's able to even come back and attack all these different squares. So if you have and then on this one here you have the ability to continuously attack all these different squares and stuff like that. And so when you're developing your bishops, you always want to try to put them on a square where it's going to attack the most of the board. And so a little bit of the lesser known concepts in chess is going to be space. And sometimes understanding space is enough for victory because, if you have your piece somewhere and you're controlling a certain amount of the board and you compare that to another person's piece who might not be, influencing that much of the board, just simple mathematics will tell you that your piece is a little bit more optimized than their piece and stuff is. So just rolling on here. So we have a knight to C6. Just kind of like throwing a little attack on this, D4 square here. Knight to F3 goes ahead and, defends that. All right, so we have bishop to F5. Just the same concept, developing the bishop to, a good central square. All right, so we have E3. We have E6. And now, if you guys notice, pretty much black and white have played the exact same moves. Usually you'll run into situations when you're playing games where, if you and your opponent are both playing very solidly, you guys are both not always playing identical moves, but, you're playing very similar moves. Because if you just kind of look at it, the white and black knights are at their most ideal squares. The bishops are at their most ideal squares and they're actually outside of the pawn chain. So instead of blocking the bishops in with these pawns, which happens sometimes in different openings, the bishops and the knights and everything, they're on their most optimal squares, to be able to be influencing as much of the board as possible. All right, so we have queen to B3, just kind of putting a little bit of pressure, trying to attack this this lonely pawn over here on B2. So of course, as a lot of you guys know, when you develop your bishops, a lot of times, this G2, B2, B7, and G7 squares will be kind of vulnerable because the bishops immediately, when they're sitting on their home squares, defend those pawns. All right, so we have bishop to B4, just adding a little bit of pressure onto that knight there. All All right, so we have bishop to c6, or bishop to b5, doing the same thing. And so, like I said, I mean, with the exception of this black queen coming to this square, you know, black and white have played almost identical. But what I want you guys to do right now, kind of like a small tester real quick for you guys. If you guys want to go ahead and just pause the video and take a look. I'm curious to see like what people would play in this particular position. You know, taking into account everything that's going on and what you see. You know, what's something that you guys would play here. And so if you want to pause the video real quick and take a look, you know, me and the rest of everybody else is going to be kind of sitting there waiting for you. So go ahead and, like I said, pause the video real quick and see, you know, kind of what moves, you know, you come up with. All right, cool. So since you guys are back, I'm going to go ahead and show you immediately what the move was that was played in the game. And that was castles. Now, like I said before, guys, you know, you always want to try to castle as soon as possible. You know, it seems like, you know, when you're kind of at the beginning stages of playing, or you just learned, it kind of seems like you're wasting a move, you know, by castling. Kind of seems like, man, you know, it's like I'd rather do something more productive and stuff. But, you know, a lot of the problems are, you know, you'll run into a lot of tactics and a lot of issues if you're not castling your king. And so something I was interested in here, if we just back up a touch here, now castles in this position is going to be the utmost move that you can do because, I mean, almost all other moves will fail. And so we'll go into a couple different variations to kind of see like exactly what I'm talking about with that. And so in this position here, you have a direct threat. And it is a tactic that is called remove the defender. So a lot of the times in my games that I previously covered, I've talked about that concept of removing the defender, being able to undermine the protection of a certain piece by removing it and then being able to just win the piece cleanly. So I'm not sure if some of you guys might have been thinking that there was really two moves that I was kind of thinking about in this position that, you know, people might think that they can play. They might seem like they're active. They might seem like they're defending. And I was really curious if any of you guys either came up with this move queen to a5 or came up with this move rook to c8. And so if we just look at both of those moves, and so some of you guys might have been thinking, man, okay, well, I got my knight attacked here. And so it's like, man, let me just try to defend it. So you might have went rook to c8, right? Okay, so you're like, man, I'm defending the knight. Everything is good. Like, I don't really have to worry about the pin as much. Everything is everything, right? Well, the main thing that you need to be looking at in this particular position right here is the fact that this knight is pinned to this king. And so the thing about the situation is this knight is the only defender of this bishop. And if you guys recognize that, then you'll understand that basically this bishop, in essence, in this particular position, is undefended. And so the problem is you actually have the ability to just capture the bishop automatically with no consequences. Now, as you guys know, if you might have calculated this variation, then you might have calculated that knight takes queen, right? But like I said, the problem is the bishop is pinning the knight to the king. And so the knight is immovable. And this is what we call an absolute pin. There is two different types of pin. There is an absolute pin and a relative pin. A relative pin is you're pinning a less valuable piece to a more valuable piece, but you do have the legal ability to move that piece out of the way. That is a relative pin. And an absolute pin is when any piece is pinned to the king, you do not have the ability to move it. It is impossible. It is an illegal move. And so in this particular situation, this knight is absolutely pinned to the king and it cannot legally move. So moving rook to c8 would have failed to that tactic. And so also in what I was saying before, as far as removing the defender, it was possible for you to move rook to c8 and for you to just actually snap this knight off the board. And so there's two different things in that particular situation. You could have just captured the bishop outright, or you could have just simply removed the defender. And the thing about this position is this actually comes with the check on the king. And so as you guys know, you move the king out of the way, you attack, you capture the checking piece, or you move a piece in the way. Any one of those things is going to fail. So if you move rook here to capture, if you capture with the pawn, if you move this knight in the way, or heaven forbid, if you move the queen in the way, none of those things are going to protect this bishop from dropping. So it's either an immediate capture, or it's a, it's just a removing the defender and capturing. So if we just back up and we try to go into this variation here, I'll just quickly go through like kind of a little side variation here. And so moving queen to a5, it does protect this bishop, because once you remove the knight, you're not going to have any protection on it. But it just allows white to castle here. And so let's say you're just like, hey man, I'm going to go ahead and just get the bishop taken care of. Let me just take here. You actually run into this move here, bishop to d6. And what bishop d6 is doing is cutting off the king's ability to castle, because as you guys know from my video, I'll actually put it up in the right hand corner for any of you who aren't fully familiar with the ability to castle, how you properly castle. This king is not able to pass through this attack square on its way to castling. So it prevents the king from castling. It allows the king to castle this way, but as you guys can see with all these pieces that are hanging out over here, it's a little bit hard to do that. So even if you try to maybe, make an effort to, to save the bishop by moving it to like a better square, you'll end up with bishop takes c6 check, pawn takes c6, and then you'll have a tempo on this rook right here. And the most logical thing to do would be to move this queen back to try to defend everything. And then you're going to have knight to e5, pressuring checkmate on this. And you see there's just so much penetration that the white, even though they're actually down a piece, they have so much penetration on this rank and just in black's position, period. And so, you're going to have a situation where there's not a lot for you to do. I mean, you're going to have to probably back bishop up, and then you're going to have a check here. You're going to move knight back. You're going to take. If you have a situation where, you take with the queen, you're dropping this rook. And so you just lost the exchange. This pawn is under fire. You're going to have to move queen back here. You can just kind of go back here, check. Queen comes in the way, you back up over here. So you're going to have a situation where you've lost your ability to castle. White is castled, and it's kind of a miserable position here for black. And so you definitely don't want to go into that situation. So like I said, castling is the best thing that you can do in this particular position. And so you can never underestimate the power of castling. It doesn't seem like it does anything, but it can keep you out of some pretty bad trouble. So we're just going forward here. So we have bishop takes c6. And we have the switch and zug move. Bishop takes c3 with check. Queen takes c3. We're just trying to preserve our structure here. We don't want to give ourselves a backward pawn. All right, and so we have a switch and zug move, rook to c8. It's the most logical thing to do, because, of course, if we go into a situation where you just automatically take back, you're just going to be losing a pawn. We got 6 to 7 here. And so, you're going to want to kind of throw this in there. But then we have knight to e5. Knight to e5 tries to hold, the bishop's place and tries to give it a defender so that you can still ultimately win the pawn. And so, you have to do something about that. So we have knight to g4. All right, we have knight takes g4, bishop takes g4, and queen to b4. Now you know that you're going to be losing that bishop. There's not anything you can do, to try to hold on to that bishop, because of course if you have something like rook to here, then you're gonna have kind of a problem after rook takes here, and then you're gonna be having to go into this type of situation here. And so it's pretty much keeping everything fairly equal, but see queen b4. All right, and so we're realizing that we're going to be giving that piece up, so we got to kind of go try to make another type of active move. So this is probably a good try here. All right, so we have rook takes c6. All right, and we have queen takes b7. And we have queen to c8. Now something I want you guys to be paying attention to in this particular position before I go into this next move is what you notice as black and what you notice as white. Now, if we're taking everything into account, we have the fact that black has castled. This rook is on an active open file, and this queen is backing this rook up. And now comparing it to white's actual position, white is actually doing a little bit more shaky, because you have this king that's dead stuck in the center of the board. It hasn't castled. This rook is not being really used. And so it's not like white is losing, but you can see that white is they're in a little bit of a questionable position here. So noticing that, Wesley So goes ahead and he says, hey man, I'm gonna go ahead and just take this queen off the board and try to reduce some of this pressure that we have, right? But if we just back up here, I'm curious as to how many of you guys will say, okay, you know what? They have 3 pawns and 6 pawns. So they have 6 pawns and I have 7 pawns. So I'm kind of up. So let me just kind of retreat back and let me just try to like kind of be in a safe situation, right? Well, the problem is what I was talking about before about being prevented from castling. You're going to see this move here come on the board, queen to a6. And the problem is it is doing the same thing as the bishop was doing earlier and is preventing this king from being able to castle. And like I said earlier in the video, I went ahead and put the, how to properly castle. And so that way, if you have any questions on how to castle properly, I'm definitely putting that in there for you guys. But when you have this position here, queen to a6, you're gonna probably want to do something like maybe trying to knock the bishop away, but then you actually have the Zwischenzug move, rook f to c8, and you can see that you have a lot of problems on this file, and you have the queen penetrating into the position, and so for any of you guys, I might just say, hey man, let me just go ahead and win this piece, right? It's actually gonna fail to rook to c2. And you guys hear me talk about, doubling your rooks on files. You guys hear me about putting rooks on the 7th. These are all beginner concepts, but at the end of the day, if you're understanding these concepts, you're going to be doing very well just applying those general concepts to gameplay. And that's all that Anish Giri would be doing in this particular position. And now the problem is the direct threat of mate on e2, and there's not a way to prevent it. You're going to have to move the queen in a way. This is just one of many losing variations. The queen is going to automatically take, and the computer actually gives a3. Now, I mean, it's really bad when you get in this situation and the computer's like, yeah, man, like move a3. But then, I mean, you're just going to have checkmate that follows. Like, I mean, when the computer gets in a situation where it's already calculated checkmate for you, it starts giving you moves like that. Like, any one of these other moves, you can move b4, b3, h4, you can do this. Like, there's literally any amount of things that you can do. And it doesn't matter because you cannot prevent this move or there's no way the king can move. You're going to have checkmate inevitably on the next move. So we definitely don't want to go into that variation. So Wesley So says, hey, I'm going to go ahead and just trade down. So we do that, and we have a rook f takes c8. And so if you notice, I mean, black has a really good hold on this file here. It's pretty dominating the file. Interestingly enough, white is actually doing better in this position than black is, as crazy as it seems from what you're looking at. All right, so now we get to the ability where we castle. All right, so we have a5, we have b3, all right, f6, and now we have f3. And so we are 19 moves into the game, and f3 is the novelty of the game. So this position has been played before up until this move f3. F6 has been played on 2 separate occasions, but F3 is the first time that this move has been seen. So, we're backing the bishop up to F5, rook to E1. We're definitely trying to, do basically what white is setting up here. So just to go a couple more moves in, we have bishop to G6. We have E4. All right, we have pawn takes E4, pawn takes E4, rook to D8, and rook A to D1. And so basically, I mean, the intention is very clear. We're trying to push this pawn up. We're trying to make some trades like this and trying to get a passed pawn. Because definitely with the position like it is, if black plays too passively, you're going to create a passed pawn and you're going to be able to get it to here where this bishop has the ability to hold this pawn there. And then all you got to try to do is move your king up. And, that's a very strong position for white. And so we're just trying to go on the counterattack as black. So rook to C2, just trying to attack this pawn over here. All right, so we're pushing here, e5. So we have pawn takes e5, bishop takes e5, and rook takes a2. So we're just trying to trade down these pieces here. So, attacking the rook here with rook to a1, and then also indirectly attacking this pawn here on a5. And, there's not a lot for black to be able to do than for them to trade down. So we have rook takes a1, we have rook takes a1, and rook to d5. And so we're just trying to get this, we're defending the a5 pawn. We're trying to get the rook back into an active open file. So, you either have, the f file or you have the c file to put that rook on. And so we're transferring over. So we have rook to b5, just attacking this pawn on b3. And so, there's really 2 ways to kind of defend it. I mean, you can move rook up here, which is fine, or you can do that. Pretty much do what happened in the game. So we have rook to c8 with check. The king moves down to f7. And so we bring the rook behind. So, there was either, like I said, moving rook here, or there was actually doing the check and then transferring the rook over here because it's defended by the bishop. So, You know, we're just pretty much trading down here. So we have rook takes b8. We have bishop takes b8. And it is in this position that the players agree to a draw. So as you guys saw, there was definitely some situations here where Wesley So, had he miscalculated or played just slightly the wrong move, or even Anish Giri. So even though we got into a draw, you know, you had, like I said, it was exciting, guys. You had a situation where if either player had played just even a little bit, you know, of a seemingly, you know, good move, you know, it could have disastrously, you know, it could have been, you know, the consequences could have been disastrous. So for me, that's a pretty exciting game. And this picture that I got for Anish Giri and Wesley So is actually taken from that game that they played. So you'll see the thumbnail. I was actually able to make the thumbnail all the way across the entire screen. So I mean, I think it looks really good. And so, you know, like I said, this was an exciting game, and there was a lot of tactics. Even though it was a draw, it definitely wasn't a dull game at all. And so I appreciate you guys stopping by. Go ahead and subscribe and like for me. Pass my videos around. You know, let me know in the comments how you guys like everything. And, you know, I appreciate the support and everything. So Salamat to you guys out there in Wesley So, Philippine land. So I will see you guys in the next video. I appreciate it.